Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Kindled. I'm your host, Haley Williams, and I am going to bring you a conversation today that I had with Hannah Maruyama of Degree Free. This is a very interesting topic for me as someone who was raised kind of with the embedded, assumption that college was the obvious right next step for everyone who wanted to be successful. And, at one point that may have been more true, but today things have changed a lot. The economy's changed. The job market has changed. The way that you can learn has changed. There's so many things to consider when it comes to our kids' future and career plan. And I, for one, am still trying to kind of wrap my mind around exactly how to think about it. And I really found this conversation to be incredibly insightful and helpful for me as a parent. Of course, there's a time and a place for degrees, which you'll hear Hannah talk about, but it's important that we approach this really thinking more than just that college degrees are an obvious choice for our kid. And so that's what you will find in this episode today. Before we hit play on that conversation, I want to remind you to subscribe to both the audio podcast, and if you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button so you'll see new episodes in your feed. Still growing our new YouTube channel. And I appreciate you guys doing that. Also, leaving ratings and reviews helps so much, helps people find the show, and helps other like-minded Christian women find that content. Other than that, I want to thank our sponsors for today, which are We Heart Nutrition, Unsifted, and Bubble Pop Club. Okay, without further ado, here's my conversation with Hannah Maruyama. All right, so today on Kindled, I'm chatting with Hannah Maruyama from Degree Free. Hannah, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I have been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do, because I am newer to your content, but when I found your page and saw what you guys talk about, I was like, this is incredible. And I love that someone is having these conversations and starting this and helping people think about it and see and kind of normalize the whole thing around college degrees. So tell us who you are.
So I run Degree Free, and what we do at Degree Free is we help 16 to 20-year-olds find career paths that work for them, that help them to build the type of life that they want. And we help parents guide their kids in this. And so what we talk about a lot is the job market. We talk about how to find out what path fits your child's needs, how to figure out what their needs are, what the marketable skill set is for that. Our process is something that is foolproof because it's entirely based on individual needs. And this is something that I think a lot of people get wrong about trying to figure out how to help their young adults career plan. The way that we do it now, even homeschoolers fall prey to this as well, but is always strengths, passions, interests. And that doesn't really make any sense, because if you ask kids what their strengths, passions, and interests are, they're always going to be a narrow set of things that they've been exposed to for the most part. And
Right.
then you're going to get kids that want to be artists. They want to be all of these things, and they want to be things that they've seen, that they've been exposed to. They don't necessarily want to be things that will probably be the type of work that they'll do really well at, that's going to help them, be able to afford the type of family life they want, be able to live where they want, be able to buy homes, be able to travel, be able to do the things that they actually want in life, even be able to save the capital to build their own businesses. So approaching it from the opposite way, which is what are your needs? And once those are met, then you filter by strengths, passions, and interests. It becomes much clearer what career paths actually fit. And so at Degree Free, we just have flipped essentially all of the college career consulting on its head. And so we just do it the way that it should be, which is what do you need from your work? How, what kind of jobs fit that? How are you going to get it? What are you going to learn? What order are you going to learn it in? How long is it going to take? And what's the expected return on these things? All things that colleges should do and do not.
Wow. Okay, so you're challenging even some of the things that I have thought. My audience knows my background as I was homeschooled. I went to a four-year school, but I always kind of had an idea of what I wanted. I was interested in writing, but I thought the only thing I knew you could do with writing was be a journalist. So I thought I want to be a journalist, and that's like I was on yearbook staff and newspaper and stuff in high school. So because I did go to a university model school for high school, but it wasn't until I encountered in college what that actually looked like that I was like, I don't want to do this. And everyone in that world is liberal. So I didn't really fit in there. And I was like, okay, well, I got to find another thing to do that involves writing. And anyway, I totally approached it from the way of like, I'm interested in this, I think I'm good at this, and I care about these things, right? And so then I like looked for what job fits that. So tell me how you would approach that differently back when I was in high school. Like, how would you counsel me differently from how I approached it, if that makes sense?
So there's a four-part framework that we use that's pretty universal that we advise all parents to get familiar with. And it's something that two adult job seekers can probably find they can find a lot of value in as well. But we call them the degree free four: income, location, schedule, and work environment. Sorry, my fingers are always weird when I do that. But those are the four that matter the most. And your life
Income,
satisfaction,
location, sorry.
work environment, and schedule. So these are the four factors that will influence whether or not you hate your job. And
Okay.
so if you pick those things correctly, you will be satisfied with the type of work you do. You will be satisfied with your job because it's a tool. Work is a tool that will help you live the way that you want. And what we've done, and a lot of this has to do with college marketing. This is a little bit of an aside, but a lot of the reason there's so much weight put to passion in your work is because colleges and college marketing in general is trying to justify the six-figure bankruptcy exempt price tag that's attached to it. And if the only way to get to your passion and fulfill your purpose in life is to spend $100,000 as a 17 to 18-year-old child, then you're going to spend it. Your family will find the money. They'll find some way to do it. They'll sign the loans, they'll co-sign the loans, they'll do whatever. And it's once you realize that that's the reason, that's a lot of the reason why it's all this passion focus, follow your heart, all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's all in the pursuit of getting parents to co-sign, you know, loans.
Okay. This is mind blowing. I mean,
Well, but
it's
if you
all
look at
just
it, right?
marketing. It's all
Yeah,
marketing.
yeah.
It's like make your child happy, fulfill themselves. Like this is the way to have a happy adulthood. And what child or what parent doesn't obviously want their kid to, thrive in their adulthood? And so you're like, yes, if this is what's going to make you happy, sweetie, then we're doing it.
Yeah. Or if the child's been told like, "Hey, this is the only job that you can do that'll allow you to fulfill your passion of biology or insert, a very narrow major here," then they'll pay whatever the cost is. And again, like I said, they'll find the money even if they don't have it. It's just one of those things that when you realize that it becomes a little more clear what's going on. But the ultimately, if parents can figure out what those four are for their child. So where do they want to live and build their life? How much do they need to live? Every kid is going to have a different answer for that question because they all want different things. You'll get some kids that they need to earn a lot to do the kind of things that they want to do. Other kids don't need to earn that much. And that's really freeing in a lot of ways. It's freeing to know, okay, you know what, this is the price tag attached to the life that I want to live, the things that I want to have, if kids have like a really big goals of owning homes in high cost of living places, or if the place that they live now, the cost of living has gone up a lot and they want to stay near family, then that becomes location. It's income and location, but if your location costs a lot to stay in, then you need to earn more in order to be able to stay there and have the things that you want in life. If you want to live in a certain area, you want to own a home and you want to be able to have a one income household. All right, well, now you got to figure out what that looks like, for young men or young women that have those goals. That's important. And once you figure out which one of those things is the priority or which two are the priority, let's say for some kids it's schedule. Let's say there's medical needs or something like that, and they can't work a full-time schedule. They physically can't work a full-time schedule. That's going to become really important. If a young person is, a paraplegic, or if they have cerebral palsy, they're not able to work in certain work environments because it's just physically tough for them. So that's going to also dictate what type of work is going to rise to the top here, because there's some jobs that just don't lend themselves well to that, and they're not a good fit, just like I
Mhm.
said, because of the work environment you go into. So you at that age, probably what I would have done. Interestingly, your story sounds a lot like mine. I also went to college. I went to college early and I was going for journalism. No one told me that you can just write for a local newspaper. You don't have to buy college degrees at all. You can just go to the newspaper and you can just write, and you can just write. I also worked for the university paper. I also worked on the yearbook. I literally did the same
Mhm.
thing that you did.
Mhm.
And years later, having met somebody who ran a regional newspaper, like a community newspaper that was distributed across, an entire state, and he didn't have a college degree. He was in charge of the entire thing, and he just said,
Wow.
no one has to do that. You just have to start writing, and you have
Hmm.
to take an entry level job, and you have to start writing. That's what you have to do. And
And here we are both having podcasts.
well, here we are in right?
Jour
It's a type of
Right, we're
journalism. It's
doing
a type of
journalism,
media. It's a
yeah.
type of communications. And so what I would have said for you was if the thing that rose to the top for you in your life was work environment, which is working, and this can border on industry, which we tell people to be careful with, because a lot of times you'll get kids that are just, oh, I really want to go into the medical field. I really want to go into social work. I really want to go into XYZ. And they don't really understand that specific careers will limit them, like specific occupations will limit them in income. They will limit them in availability of work, and it will dictate their location. It will dictate how much they make, because there are ceilings to certain careers. Even certain professional licenses have ceilings of earnings, or it'll tell you if you want to earn past this ceiling of earning, you'll have to move to a certain place where the cost of living is higher to command the higher wage. So it's just kind of it's almost like just a series of gears. And when you turn the gears correctly, you're going to get a different outcome for every kid because everybody has slightly different needs, right? So a young man who wants to make 45K and live in rural Indiana near his family is going to have totally different needs than, a young lady who wants to live in Palm Beach and wants to own her own house. And, it's just like it's just a completely different thing, completely different requirements, and wants to work a 4-day work week. There's just
Mhm.
totally different jobs. You're going to get totally different careers that come out of that. And so it depends on whatever you put as the top priority for your child. But depending on what you put on
Mhm.
the top, the other things will also help you get a clearer picture of what careers your child should actually pursue. And then the real kicker here, and this is what parents need to know, especially homeschool parents, only 7.7% of all the jobs in our entire country require college degrees. It's almost none of them. It's like
Wow.
really difficult to get. It's really actually difficult to hit the degree wall. And then of that 7.7%, about a third of those jobs don't make positive ROI. So they require
Hmm.
degrees, but they're not going to make the money back. So
Wow.
if you want to live your life that way, that people can do whatever they choose, but
Mhm.
if you're okay with paying debt for the rest of your life and you're not ever going to make the money back, but it's important to you to do whatever that job is because work environment is top priority, or job title industry is top priority, then it is what it is.
But then you're gonna make it with full knowledge rather than how most people do, which is making that decision thinking that this is, like, absolutely essential for my child to be successful, which, we're probably about the same age, like, that was totally the message that I got from my parents and that I grew up believing was, you go to college as just a default, and it is what successful, smart well, maybe this is not what you learned, but this is definitely what my parents kind of communicated to me was just like, this is the obvious next step, and because I was strong academically and scored well on my ACT test, and it's just like a natural thing. You head to college. What are you gonna go to college for? It wasn't ever a question for me, and so this way of thinking about it as, well, is this essential? And like you're saying, having a different rubric for evaluating whether that is the choice that I should make as a young person, it's pretty new even for me. And so I would imagine it feels even newer for people who are older than me who have thought this way for a really long time. And that would be a hard paradigm shift to make. I'm sure you encounter that all the time.
I do, and it sounds like, yeah, I think we are probably about the same age, and my parents had the exact same mentality, and I was actually homeschooled as well. And so my mom was a nurse, and my dad was in the military. My dad was an officer in the military through the reserves, so he got paid to go to college. And then my mom, obviously, if you're a nurse, at the time, they changed the laws at the time, so she ended up, needing a bachelor's degree to keep certain accreditation at the hospital that she worked for. But you know, both jobs legally require college degrees. They fall into the 7.7%. Nurses fall into that, and so do Army officers because they have to have a degree in order to become an officer, unless you're a warrant officer. So both of them, it was just kind of a foregone conclusion as well. You just go to college. It's just what you do. It's the natural next step. And there was no consideration about cost. There was no talk about cost. There was no talk about, I had to pay for it myself. And so I ended up dual enrolling really young on a scholarship as well. And I also did fine. I wasn't like a stellar student, but I did fine. It was just really interesting to see how that there was just a lack of conversation about the financial implications, and then not just the financial implications, but also what it was for. Nobody asked me, what are
Mhm.
you doing this for? Which is crazy. I actually just earlier today, I watched a clip of the Dave Ramsey show where a girl calls in and she says that she's gotten into her dream school and it's $38,000 a year, and they've given her a $44,000 scholarship over all 4 years, which is like laughable. It's like hilarious. They're giving her
Mhm.
a 25% discount on something she doesn't need to buy at all because she's going for communications. to go into ministry work. Go work at a church. Go get an entry level job. And no one asked that question though. She calls in and they talk about, oh, how can you swing this? And no one asks her, what are you going for, until the very end of
Even
the
on the Dave
conversation.
Ramsey show.
Yeah, because that's just not socially what we do. Because it's a foregone conclusion. It's just, you're going to go, and then where are you going to buy from, and then how are you going to buy it, before anyone ever asks like what for. And then when the answer is inevitably something, because again 92.3%, when inevitably the answer is that it doesn't require a degree, we just don't have an answer or guidance for young people about how to bridge that gap. And then the other thing too is I think it's just scary for parents, because again, we're talking about an $848 billion industry. There's a ton of marketing behind it, and it's so good, and they're so good at it that they've even convinced homeschool parents. Homeschool parents, it's so interesting how they've fallen prey to this. 74%, I just talked about this recently at a conference, but 74% of homeschool parents will send their kids directly into college after they graduate high school. That's insane. That's insane. You just took your kids out of the system for 12 years and you're going to turn around and you're going to put them right back into the meat grinder. Why? Why would you do that? And most of them, if you ask them why, they have no answer, because they don't know. It's just because they don't know what else to do. A
Fear,
lack of
yeah.
information. Yeah, it's fear. It's fear.
Let me pause and tell you about one of my favorite sponsors, and that is Unsifted. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me using their products in my baking and cooking, but this is fresh milled flour. Now, before you think that's just too crunchy or way over your head, I promise you it's not. If I can do it, you can do it. I have been using fresh milled flour for almost a year now, and I absolutely love having this as a tool in my family's health arsenal. And here's why: because unsifted fresh milled flour has 40 out of the 44 key essential nutrients and active enzymes that our bodies need to properly digest gluten and even function on a daily basis. So you have heard that gluten is the bad guy in the bread, right? But it's actually not. It is the processing of the flour that makes the gluten difficult for our bodies to handle. But fresh milled flour contains all of the enzymes that are needed to process and digest the gluten properly. It's almost like the way that God made grain. It was actually intentional. But the Unsifted starter kit is the ultimate easy button for fresh flour baking, and it has everything you need: the high quality grain blends, easy to follow recipe cards, and the Wonder Mill, a super fast mill giving you a high quality flour in seconds. Go to unsifted.com to order your Unsifted starter kit today. Use code Kindled10 for $10 off your first order of $100 or more. That's code Kindled10 at unsifted.com.
So I have been, I guess this idea it has been floating around in my head for a couple years now that, we have four girls now, we have four girls, and, my highest aspiration for them is that they become wives and mothers, and that they're able to stay home and raise those babies. And that if they need to contribute financially, they can do that from home in a very flexible way. So like you were talking about, didn't you say location was the number one consideration?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, no, it can be. It
can
depends.
be.
It
You
depends. So some kids it's work environment, which would be what you're
Okay.
talking about, which is flexible, like work contingent on flexibility of environment, which means you can work from home, or you can work from abroad, or you can work from a hybrid work environment. So, yeah, that would be work environment.
Okay.
Yeah, location
So
is where you live.
got it. So as I'm thinking about that, one of the things that I often hear when it pertains to girls and their career path is, well, you need to have a fallback. You need to have a fallback option. Like really, which is just a very dark way to make choices in life, I guess. Like if your husband dies or if he leaves you or something terrible happens, what are you going to do to earn an income? But this way that you're pitching this conversation feels to me like it takes away the false dichotomy option of you have to go to school or else you're not prepared for that worst case scenario as a woman. Is that correct? Like this is really something that everyone can think about now. It's not so much like, are you going to go have a career or are you going to get married instantly and have babies? It's like you could ask anyone this question and they could actually find an answer that makes sense for them.
Yes, correct.
Right. It's not
We
determinate.
frequently Yes, yes. You've identified, yes, that's correct. It's really, I think a lot of our culture right now too, everything is, I use this phrase a lot, but like it's everything's just back to the future. And I'm not using it right, but this is just how I view it. I think we're closer to fax machines in people's houses that print out daily newspapers than we are to more internet. People are just sick of technology, and a lot of technology is to free people from technology at this point. And so I kind of view work the same way. School is looking the same way. A lot of people are breaking out of the public school system and they're going back to the one room schoolhouse model. Everything that we've seen in the last, like, basically since COVID has been back the other way. It just looks different. It's better. It's just a different version. And I view this the same way. People used to pick their work based on what they needed. It's like nothing that we're doing is revolutionary. It's very simple, it's very strategic, and it's the way that people used to pick work. When farmers used to, like, let's talk about, like, Little House on the Prairie, for example. A lot of people are familiar with Laura Ingalls Wilder's story. At the point where they had their farming is seasonal, and there's a point in the story where Charles Ingalls goes to work for the railroad because at that point, their crops are not mature enough to provide for their family, and so at that point, he needs a different type of work, and so he goes and he gets it. And when his purpose is fulfilled for that, he goes back to the farm because the farm at that point can support them. And so if you look at work in this way, and especially if you look at work in this way when your child is transitioning into adulthood, it can put them just miles ahead of everybody else. Because if you just remove this, you have to buy a six-figure paper that has no market application immediately after you turn 18 years old, all of a sudden the world opens up to them. A lot of people think it closes down, but it doesn't. The main reason, too, is just to de-risk this for parents, is that when your child turns 26 years old, and I say this all the time, their brain will be fully formed. Their prefrontal cortex will be fully formed. Something that also conveniently happens at the same time is the FAFSA is no longer tied to the parent's income. Cost goes through the
Okay.
floor. Interesting, right? Like, and I think that if people were not allowed to take out student loans until they were that age, people would be much happier in their jobs if they do buy degrees. They would only buy degrees they actually needed, or that they were just pursuing for the love of learning in that way, which is also a totally valid reason to go to college and buy degrees. But if people approach college as a last resort instead of the first domino, it changes educational spend, it changes educational planning, it changes career outcomes, and it also de-risks the whole situation for young people.
Mhm.
And it makes it much less permanent, much less scary, and much easier for them to make decisions because now what they're looking for is the right entry level work. And
Mhm.
that's very easy to find because most employers in our country, most employers, most jobs, something like, I believe it's 80%, somewhere between 79 and 85% of the market is companies with under 1,000 employees. So not Fortune
Mhm.
500, not
Right.
the big boys. It's regional, small companies. And you can get into those companies by applying and calling,
Mhm.
you know.
Man, it's just kind of frustrating when you realize that this makes a lot of sense and then you see how many people are, just crushed under the weight of student loans or paying them off into their 30s and unable to do other things financially, maybe unable to buy a house,
Mhm.
unable to maybe even put their kids in private school if they want to. Just do other things that by that point they're like, I'm strapped. I am, I'm saddled with these loans that I may be not even using. Or if you're like in my husband's case, like we paid his loans off years ago, but he was the only one that brought loans into our marriage. And I think he took 7 years to graduate and get a 4-year degree. So, not a
Average is
doctor.
5.5 years, so that's
Okay.
pretty
Wow.
normal. It's on purpose, it's not on
Yeah.
accident. The longer you stay on
And he
campus, the more likely you are to buy another degree, buy a master's degree, buy a PhD. It's just an upsell. It's just
wow.
upselling. Yeah.
And in his case, he transferred a few times. So, like, of course, lost credits and then had to go, take more credits and then ended up at KU getting a communications degree because that was the easiest path to finally getting that piece of paper. And now he owns his own business, and he owns his own business. Is very successful. And what does that degree do? I mean, he had a philosophy minor. It's like, cool, you read some books with a liberal professor who like talked you through it, like as though that was super valuable to you. I mean, it is where we met, so there's that, which maybe that's another piece of the conversation we can talk about, but
Oh, let's do it.
it's
I can debunk that one for everybody. It'll take
okay,
me
well,
10
yeah, because
seconds.
a lot of people do feel that that is how else are they going to meet their spouse, right?
Less than 1% of people meet on college campuses currently.
Seriously?
Yeah. It's 0.74%.
What? How
Yeah.
is that possible?
Because, online dating is now how majority of people will meet. And online dating also includes like things like media. There's a joke that all software eventually becomes a dating app, but so any social media, any platform becomes a dating app because people anywhere there's people, it becomes a dating app, right? Because people will meet people. But yeah, it's actually more your child is more likely currently right now if your child is like within young adult dating years like 18 to let's say 18 to 24, they're more likely to meet somebody, they're more likely to get married to somebody that lives in your neighborhood than they are to meet somebody on a college campus.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it wasn't so sad that how many people
Yeah.
are still
So many
thinking that
people
it
fall
really
prey to that. I hear that all the
yeah.
time. I was just talking to somebody who runs
Wow.
a big co-op in Houston, and he said, "Can you talk to the moms because they all think that their daughters have to go to college to meet a spouse?" I'm like, "Well, they're gonna be sorely disappointed because that is not how
Yeah.
people meet." Yeah.
Wow, but I mean, that's another side too is like the disappointment of I have single girls that follow me and they're struggling because they're like, I didn't meet my husband at college and now I feel like it's too late for me because I missed the window.
Can I give you a piece of advice that's completely, totally unrelated? My
Yeah.
side passion interest is people meeting and dating. And I think that actually, probably the next thing people stop spending money on college. I think that the next big frontier is actually going to be matchmaking. This is my back to the future philosophy, but people are going to go back to spending money on matchmakers. I literally think that's where things are going to go because your spouse is more important than your paper. Like who you child's partner is more important
Yeah.
than whatever paper they buy. And people are realizing that. I've actually seen some charts on Pew did some research on what parents are starting to care about more. And as degrees have moved down the list, spouse has moved up the list. But if
Well,
your
there you
listeners
go.
are single and they're trying to find a spouse, one of the biggest problems that I see is that they work in, and this is totally off topic for
Yeah, yeah.
conversation, but they work in an industry that is dominated by the same gender. So teachers have a really hard time finding a spouse because there's no men. This is also true on the flip side. So men who work in male dominated fields often also have hard time finding a spouse. So if men are firefighters or they work construction, they also have a hard time meeting the opposite gender. So the solution for that is either get a job in a field where you're not the majority gender, or volunteer in that same field. So if you're a guy and you're single and you can't meet women, like let's say, like I said, you work in construction or something, go volunteer at a food bank or a nonprofit or a hospital or something like that. If you work at a
Mhm.
hospital or a school, like go do Habitat for Humanity or go somewhere where there's men, and then that
Wow.
exposure will help you to meet somebody of the opposite gender.
This is
Yeah.
so fascinating. Wow. So your next business can be matchmaking.
I think somebody else is going to be very good at that. I've been watching for whoever, if I see that on the rise, I would want to invest in it because I do believe that that is going to be a big I think that's going to be a big problem that's going to get
Wow.
solved. I don't know how, but somebody's going to solve
Yeah.
it.
The next sponsor I want to share with you is We Heart Nutrition. We Heart Nutrition is a pro-life, family-owned supplement company that makes premium, research-backed supplements for men and women at every life stage, from preconception to pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, and beyond. Every product is crafted with the most bioavailable forms of nutrients so you actually feel the difference. There are no watered down formulas, no unnecessary fillers, just wholesome, effective ingredients. Plus, they give 10% of every purchase to pregnancy resource centers to support moms and babies. I want to share with you something that someone asked me recently on Instagram was, girl, how do you not have postpartum hair loss after having your baby a year ago? I have not noticed your hair looking thin the way that it typically does. And I will tell you, I did lose a little bit of hair because obviously there's a huge hormonal dip after you have a baby. The biggest one a woman ever experiences, you're gonna lose some hair. But this was the least amount of hair that I've ever lost in all 4 of my pregnancies. And I believe it's because I was taking throughout my pregnancy the We Heart Nutrition prenatals. And then after pregnancy, I transitioned immediately into the postnatal, which supports your body and really just gave me everything I needed as I was breastfeeding, getting less sleep. Nutrition is spotty in those early months, weeks, days. I am going to credit We Heart Nutrition because it's really the only thing that's different compared to my other pregnancies. I'm 5 years older than my last one. And so I have just seen the difference in my own health, my energy levels, and really I went in recently and had labs drawn, and all of my levels were great. Thyroid was fine, which I've had issues with that in the past. Everything was perfect, except my B was really high. Do you know why it was high? It's because I wasn't taking a We Heart Nutrition B. I was taking some other brand. and it's not bioavailable. So it was just building up in my system. And they told me, you got to stop taking the B. Like, that's what's giving you these headaches. High or low vitamin B can lead to that. I stopped and the headaches have gone away. So that's just proof that the vitamins you take, the supplements you take, the quality matters so much. So go to weheartnutrition.com, use code Kindled20 for 20% off your first order. Support your health and a family-owned company that supports life. Again, go to weheartnutrition.com and use code Kindled20 for 20% off.
Well, I mean, I have a friend whose daughter's at college right now, and she was like, my friend, in just chatting about, having kids in that stage of life, was like, oh, let's find somewhere a little less expensive to get your MRS degree. And, I don't have kids that age yet. So it was like kind of foreign to me, but I was like, yeah, that's kind of like, that is what you're doing. In a lot of cases, like almost like she was joking about it, that is what her daughter was doing. She was just going to find a husband and let's make sure it makes sense financially, for us to go pay for you to find a husband. So it's like
1% chance of that being successful.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Man.
Yeah.
Okay. What
Yeah, if I
else
was
can
a
you
parent that
debunk for
age-
us? What are the other lies that people are believing about degrees? Because I feel like this is like a Pandora's box. Once you open it up, there's no going back.
There's a lot. So aside from the 7.7%, that's a really big, and for people who are doubting my analysis there, that's our analysis. That's a degree-free analysis of the jobs and the legal requirements. I actually have a list. I have a list now because a lot of people ask us for a list of jobs that don't require degrees. And I was like, I can't give you that list because it would be 300 pages long. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
The book itself would weigh about 60 pounds. It would be huge and it would not be navigatable. So instead I did the opposite because the list of jobs that do require degrees is really small. So that's the one I use.
Yeah.
Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, removed degree requirements from state jobs that did not legally require them, and it freed up 92% of the jobs. That was after our analysis. And I was like, oh, look at that. So spot on. And then I would say that the other myths that parents believe, I think that are really common is, so spouse is like one of the top ones. That one's really sticky too. They've done a really bang up job making people think it's a dating pool. It's not. The next one is people think that it's going to guarantee a job. That's a big one. I'm going to pick on Texas A&M because they're a recent offender I've seen of this. But one thing that parents don't realize a lot is that when colleges talk about the average salary of what their grads make, it's very strategic. They don't talk about median salary. They specifically talk about average. And the reason they talk about average is because most people that buy degrees are buying degrees that do not earn high. They're not buying degrees in Texas A&M petroleum engineering, high earning, because it's a professional license that the job attached to it is high earning. But if you look at the breakdown of like Texas A&M's graduating class, they've got 494 psychology majors and they've got I think it was 49 petroleum engineers. So it's nice to do average when you get the psychology majors in with the petroleum engineers, because the petroleum engineers can drag up all your psychology majors. But here's the other thing. Colleges, when they report on the earnings of their graduates, they use something called a knowledge rate. Their knowledge rate is the employment salary and pay that they are able to verify of their graduates. So they don't chase low earning people or unemployed people. They don't have to report that they are. And also, if people graduate, so let's use women for an example, they graduate with a master's degree and they get married and then they completely leave the workforce, they're now just scrubbed from the record. So it's like they don't exist. They don't drag down the stats. So that's another thing. They've just done a really good job just removing statistics that are just really inconvenient for the fact that, for their narrative of, if you buy from us, this is your outcome.
Right.
But the knowledge rate is based on, again, what they're able to verify. So for instance, let's say Texas A&M has 49 petroleum engineers graduate and 45 of them get offers upon graduation, and they all start at like $75K a year or something like that. And they're able to verify that because they're working for these big companies that get back with the verification. So like they're working for Chevron, they're working for, whatever oil company, and they're able to verify their salaries, and they just don't chase all 494 psychology majors because they only follow them for so long to see that they got a job. They don't follow them forever. And so if you actually look at the median salary of somebody who graduated from Texas A&M, they publicly say Texas A&M graduates make $85K a year on average. The actual median 10 years after graduation is $59,000. So 10 years after they graduate, they're 34 at this point. They're making $59,000, not 85, 59. And that's very different than the picture that they're painting for parents, which is if your child comes here for 4 years and they graduate, they're going to make
Mhm.
$85,000 a year, which is just
Right,
not
right, right.
even close to accurate.
And so remind me, the reason for it going down after a decade is
Oh, it was never that high. It's
okay.
because if you're able to verify their salaries out that far, then now you've got a much better your knowledge rate goes up, so you know more. You're able to verify more of their salaries, but further down the line, if they're employed, now you can report on what they make. So one of the reasons too that this happens is because a lot of college graduates don't get employed for a long time after they graduate. And so they'll track 10 years down the line because it's easier to track the numbers because they're actually employed.
Wow, so
Yeah, so that's a big one.
deceptive.
But also the other thing is that a lot of what colleges do is they just white label. It's kinda like at Costco when there's a good consumer product, Costco will just white label it and say, "This is
Mhm,
Kirkland
mhm.
brand," and then people go, "Wow, Kirkland brand is so good." But really, whatever all that Costco did and what they're so good at is they just are good at screening for things that are already going to be successful products, and colleges are a lot like that. They screen for kids that have statistical economic advantages that are going to make them successful, and then they just
Mm.
say, "Oh, this is us. This is in spite of
Yeah,
you. This has
yeah,
nothing to do with you."
right.
And you can see the most obvious indicator of that is that 77% of bachelor's degree holders come from households that make over $100,000 a year. So they're going to have, and those are typically two parent homes, by the way. So they're just going to be more well supported. They're going to have more exposure, more tools at their disposal in order to be successful in their life. And so the degree is not something, it's just it's a symptom of
Yeah.
how the kid was already set up. And so the
Mhm.
degree is not the thing that makes them successful. They were going to be successful in spite of the college, in spite of the $100,000. And it doesn't hit them as hard when they have the debt because there is some backstop. Whereas people who don't come from that, and I will say that like growing up, that was me. Like I'm who I'm talking to. But those people in that lower bracket, like lower middle class people, you go in, you spend $100,000 and you don't get the result of somebody who was filtered for to get into college. Oh, that's your fault, I guess. And to an extent it is, but it's very much selection bias. They just take people who
Mhm.
they know. They bet. It's
Yeah.
like a draft. It's like the NFL draft. Like I've seen this guy play, I've seen this guy play football. I bet he's going to be successful at football. And then you take the gamble and then you take credit for the success.
Do you love having your nails done but hate going to the nail salon? The strong toxic fumes, sitting there for an hour, paying $75+ for something that will only last a couple weeks? Well, I gave that up years ago when I found Bubble Pop Club. Bubble Pop Club are low tox nails that you do in the comfort of your own home. Bubble Pop Club sells both nail wrap stickers and gels that you cure using a UV light. My personal favorite are the gels, and I try to keep them on my nails at all times because they help my nails grow out so well. So if my nails are short and ugly, Bubble Pop Club gels are the answer. Ditch the salon, save so much money, and get your time back. My favorite way to do my nails is after the kids go to bed, I'll bring my nail box down, turn on a show or a podcast episode I'm listening to, and in 30 minutes or less, boom, a beautiful gel manicure. Check out Bubble Pop Club nails and use my code Haley15 to save 15% at checkout. That's code Haley15 at bubblepopclub.com.
Wow. So what about the content? Because I found, and this might depend on the field of study that you're going into, but you've heard those who can't do teach. And so a lot of times what you're getting at these colleges, and in my case, I was exposed to one web design class in my journalism school that opened my mind up to this whole field of web design. And that's what I started pursuing after I got my degree. I self-taught myself how to do WordPress web design, and I got clients, and I've been doing that now 15 years. And like that's been my bread and butter. That's been what I've been able to do from home, working for myself all this time. But I took one class from a professor who was teaching us probably the most archaic technology that was available at the time that people were already moving past. Even when I learned it, they had already eclipsed it, but it's like what he knew. So he wasn't at the cutting edge of the field. So I wasn't even getting he was teaching us like Dreamweaver coding, very, very archaic ways of building websites, which used to be what they did, but it's not what really we should have been learning, because he should have been teaching us, hey, there's these new tools, there's like CRMs and there's, or CMSs, like content management systems that now you can build like drag and drop builders, and that all existed, but I didn't know it until I got out of school and like started looking around online myself and was like, oh, there's a simpler way to do this. Cool. I can then go and like market this product that I can create because I had enough of a foundation that I was like, I could do this. But I feel like that's probably across the board in a lot of different sectors where kids are not necessarily getting the most up-to-date teaching or training in a college classroom because the very nature is like that professor's been there for 20 years. They don't have to keep on learning unless they choose to. They're going to teach you whatever they want to teach you, and you're not necessarily getting like the best content available in terms of the actual education and training. Is that something that you found?
Most parents would never, outside of a college context, pay a professor to teach their child the subject that they are teaching them because they have no experience in the private sector. If you're in humanities, social sciences, anything like that, most of them have never stepped foot off of a college campus. They walked on as freshmen and they never left. If they ever worked outside of a college campus, ever, it was in an entry level job while they were still in school as a barista. There was a study about this, and then a lot of people say, well, STEM and business, and I'm like, that's not really better because you'll have a higher percentage of them that did work outside of academia, but most of them didn't work outside of academia until they were 45 and they had a PhD and they were contracting out from academia on a specific project. Now, your business professors, sometimes a little bit different. They might have some, and I'm talking about specifically tenured professors. I'm not talking about adjuncts. Adjuncts actually are still involved in whatever work that they do, and professors of practice are typically like that as well. There's a lot fewer of those. There's a lot less of those, but your business professors, I mean, I actually just made a video about this recently where I was talking about the fact that your business professors, most of them, the last time they worked in their actual field in their industry was 15 years ago. That was Instagram didn't exist then.
Mhm.
Instagram didn't exist, Slack didn't exist, Siri didn't exist, just for a little bit of context, like for parents. Like
Yeah.
this is how long ago we're talking. And now we
Mhm.
have AI. And my background
Mhm.
is actually in AI and machine learning. And I want to be clear. Earlier I said I did go to college. I went to college for about a year and a half before I broke out. So I do not have a college degree. I'm degree free, and I worked in AI and machine learning for enterprise level SaaS. That's what I did. And that was my background. What I saw while I was doing that made it very clear to me that kids do not have time to go to college. They don't have 4 years. That's not the world of work that we're moving into. They don't have 4 years to burn. They definitely don't have $100,000 to burn
Yeah.
to get 4.5 years, 5.5 years, 6 years of their life
Mhm.
wasted being taught by people who you would never sanely spend that money and pay them to teach your child anything because they don't know anything that is going to
Right.
help your child be marketable. They just don't. They're very out of touch. And they're out of touch because academia is not real. It's a
Hmm.
government
Yeah.
subsidized bubble where they teach curriculum. They don't actually teach skill. They don't teach what the market needs. And the most obvious way to see that is the fact that employers themselves, Intelligent.com did a survey of, I think it was 1,000 hiring managers, and their top complaint was that they don't have any useful skills. None.
Of college
Colleges
graduates.
Yeah, colleges don't teach them anything useful, and so and this is college's fault, really. They're very greedy. They're like, "Oh, we teach critical thinking, you're well-rounded. We teach education. We teach scholarly behavior, blah, 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 all these things." And then when that wasn't enough to sell enough people, then they said, "We're job training. We're job training now." But they don't do either of those things well. Like, they're failing at both
Right.
of those, which is why you see suddenly people looking for an alternative because they're not doing either of the things that they claim to do, and they can't be both. And right now they're neither. So yeah,
Wow.
that's really what it comes down to. But I think parents, like, I get that there's a lot of fear, but the fear is fake. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the fear is fake. It's all self-imposed. Your child's not gonna fall off a cliff if they don't sign
Right.
up or if they don't enroll in a college at 18 years old.
Mhm.
They will not. What will
Wow.
happen? Nothing. Nothing will happen.
Right.
The college will always be there. They will always take your money. It's a business, and nobody cares. That's the other thing, is it's just like, our whole business, like, the whole business that I run now is helping this age bracket get into the right entry level work.
Mhm.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Nobody's
And
ever
your
asked to see
child,
my degree.
they don't care. They
They
don't
don't care.
care.
Yeah.
The first job that I got in tech required an advanced computer science degree. I had a $362 tech certification. Like,
But you still
obviously,
got
that's
it.
not true. Yeah, like it took me
Because
31
if
days
you
to
can
get.
do the job, that's all they care about. They're just looking for a way to evaluate, can you do the job?
when you're looking at that first, like, I would say 5 years, like 0 to 5 years of experience, what they're looking for is they're looking for attitude. Nobody's really looking for aptitude. They don't expect you to be a professional. They know that if you have less than 5
Totally.
years of experience in an industry, that you're a beginner. You don't know a lot of things. And so what they're looking for is the correct attitude and then base level skill set. And then it does get complicated for parents to figure out what that is if they don't know how to do it, right? This is easy for me to say, we do this. We do this all the time. So to me, it's very unintimidating. I realize for parents, it sounds super intimidating, but once you figure out what your kids actually need from work and you check to see if the job legally requires a degree, and if it does not, then what you start looking for is licenses, certifications, skills. Figure out which one of those are the most interesting to your child, which ones they want to learn in what order, what budget your family has to allocate for that, how quickly do you want to learn it, what's the timeline, and then how are they going to show that work? And then you start applying and you tell them to call. It really is that simple. And people have just made it this big, huge hullabaloo, social status, maybe it's education, maybe it's a dating pool, maybe it's a network, maybe it's a job. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what college
Mhm.
really is. And
Yeah.
that's where and I think it's a combination of all of those things and believing that your child has to purchase in order to to pass go and collect $200. That's what's scaring
Mm.
parents. It also feels like if your child doesn't go to college, doesn't enroll at 18, then they just go off into the great unknown. But really, they just go into the world, and there's lots of opportunities in the world, and all
Yeah.
of
So
them are
true.
not gonna cost your child $100,000. So there's really no
Very,
failing here.
very true. Right. Why not get some on the job training while collecting a paycheck? How about that?
Yeah. Or even I even wanna talk about the boot camps because a lot of the reasons people will send their kids to college too is because the pathway to send them has been made very easy, right? There's a lot of fake government subsidized loans, and that makes it feel like you're not spending that money, but you are. And people will look at the cost of let's say a $17,000 certified ethical hacking boot camp for their son and just go, "Oh, that's so expensive." I'm like, "You are about to spend $100,000. Why wouldn't you try that first?" There's a job guarantee with that thing. There's a job guarantee with that. There's nothing with the college. They're going to say, bye, good luck, and they're not going to teach them anything that's going to help them get a job. And it's just if people reclaim the way that they look at educational spend, what's the goal? Is it for your child to become a scholar and go really deep in a subject? Almost all of those kids are better served outside of a college campus with an actual master of whatever that is. Almost all of them. If the goal is career training or career experience, almost all of them are better served in entry level roles that will teach them the things that they need to know. And those things cost a lot less.
Yeah. I mean, naturally. So, what do you recommend? What do people do if their mind is exploding right now and they're like, okay, I want to learn more. How do I engage with your program? How can you help me? And where do I go from here if I have a high schooler that I'm trying to make some quick decisions with?
Sure. So I would highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel. We have a ton of long form video on there and then a podcast. We have about 200 podcast episodes that people can start checking out. Before, when we first started our podcast, we were interviewing degree free people that worked at huge companies like Nike, Meta, Dell, Microsoft, huge companies, really interesting jobs. And I would highly recommend checking those out. Those are really great resource. And then we're relaunching the podcast in the new year. And so I highly recommend parents tune into that because we're going to be dropping something really special on the podcast feed to kick it back off. And then if you want something to do about this now, we actually have a workbook set called The Degree Free Way, how to help your 16 to 20-year-old build the life they want. And it'll take you through the part of the process that's not the hyper local research because that's going to depend on you, your family, current time. The best resource for that is actually the internet. But to get to what jobs, like to get you from your child doesn't know what to do or they're not sure or they're stuck between multiple things and you're trying to figure out what do they need from their work, what jobs will actually fit that, and then what do they need to learn? And then also, does that job require a degree or not? And then how to think about jobs in a more dynamic way so you can uncover job titles that it's not within the realm that we currently teach people to look for work. And so it stretches that muscle of looking around you and thinking deeper about different types of work. What goes into creating different products, services? What are those job titles? What does that work look like? Do those jobs require degrees? Does that fit what your child wants? Is that available where you are? All that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And it's just a series of workbook exercises. There's a parent and young adult copy in there that you do together. And it's kind of fun. A lot of people really like to do it that way. And then it'll take you to the 3 jobs that actually fit the life that they want to live. And from there, you do the research to figure out what they need to learn, how they're going to learn it based on your family's budget and all that.
Wow. Awesome. This has been so helpful, Hannah. I really love that you guys are doing this, and I can't wait to keep learning more. I'm glad I have some time to kind of wrap my mind around it with my own girls. But yeah, thank you so much. And where can people find you guys online?
At Degree Free on all the major social platforms. If you want to check out our website, degreefree.com, you can sign up for the newsletter, which we're also relaunching very soon. And again, going to be doing some special stuff for people who sign up for the newsletter soon. We're just going to be writing about different parent stories and things that you can do with your child to help them figure out really what careers to take and what skills they need to be learning for the current market.
Thank you so much.